name is Raul Herrera. I was a seaman. Well, and we started getting more and more information. The messages started coming in heavier and heavier, faster and faster, and therefore as night fell, I didn't have appetite. And the irony behind this is that sometimes if you engage the enemy by surprise, if you're surprised by an ambush from the beach or from the tree line, you don't have time to think. It happens and you react. In this case, we knew that an enemy ship was heading our way, and they were armed and prepared to fight us on the high seas. And you start thinking about your life. I was 20 years old at the time, and I just didn't want to die. And I knew that that would be a possibility, and that started scaring me a lot. But I had a job to do, and therefore we all tended to, my job was to clean all the connections to our phone set so we could communicate with each other, continue plotting the chart, the course of the enemy ship, and then eventually towards early evening, after sunset, we received more messages in which we learned that there were going to be other individuals involved in this operation, in this chase. And it's such that the trawler going towards the beach led a V-shaped type of arrangement of vessels. We were aft on the starboard side of the trawler, and then we had the Coast Guard cutter, the Point Orient, that was aft on the port side. Behind them was the USS Wilhoit and the gunship, the USS Gallup. So in any attempt that the trawler would make to head port or starboard, it would get hit. It wouldn't be allowed to escape. The Point Orient had a PSYOPs team aboard. They had a mass array of loudspeakers, I believe it was on their starboard side, because they were port to the trawler. And they had the Vietnamese PSYOPs officer in the I-Corps area, as well as our U.S. PSYOPs intel officer on board. And they had a prepared dialogue speech ready for them. And so when the trawler crossed the 12-mile territorial waterline for South Vietnam, they were so close to the trawler. And of course the trawler was making an attempt during the darkness of the moon. So perhaps, and since the trawler did not have radar, they didn't know that they were being shadowed and we were waiting for them. So the Coast Guard cutter started blaring the message, and the trawler did not react. And obviously they were told to stop. We've been waiting for you. We know you're here. There is no escape, so stop. And they did not. They continued and they continued. And eventually we were given orders. The commander of the Northern Surveillance Group in Da Nang, his code name was Impair for the operation. He was the on-scene commander. Commander Stephens, I believe was his name. And so, again, his code name was Impair, and so we were under operational orders, on-site operational orders by him. He gave the order for the swift boat and the Coast Guard cutter to fire warning shots over its bow. We did that. Our gunner, Robert Middleton, he was on the twin 50s in the gun tug. Mr. Bergen ordered him to fire, and so did the Coast Guard cutter, and no reaction. And by the way, I was in the pilot house next to Mr. Bergen, standing in front of the radar. Mr. Bergen was driving. Gunner Middleton was in the gun tub. In the fantail, we had Bobby Don Carver, the bosun mate. He was manning the single 50 in the mortar. With him, his assistant was our engineman, Ronald Reinhardt, and his name was Torquay. And of course, the bosun mate in the Navy, we called him Boats. And the gunner's mate, we called him Gunner. And my job, as I said, was radio and radar. And I went by the name of Bean. which was something that my boatswain mate gave me a nickname. We also had another gentleman, a young man, a seaman as well, and his name was McNamara. And he was running ammunition from the fantail up to the gun tub as well, so we all had our jobs. And no, the trawler continued, didn't want to stop, and eventually, because the seas were getting a little bit rougher as we approached the coastline, the bigger ships began to lose contact, radar contact. Us being the last line of defense along the coast, we knew that area perfectly well. We knew where the rocks were. As a matter of fact, there was one rock, we call it Flat Rock, and it was not too far away from the mouth of the Skunk River, which is in the middle of this peninsula, Muy Batanga, and that's where the trawler was trying to make its escape, its entrance into the coast. And so eventually my boat officer was able to receive permission from from Commander Steffens, Imperial, that if we had the contact on our gadget, that we could proceed after it. And we sure did. We went after it with machine guns, and we went straight onto it with machine guns up front, and Mr. Bergen turned sideways, and we started with the after machine guns as well. And then we circled around. It's a fantail, and in a method referred to as crossing the T. We went from the starboard side to the port side and back again around, and eventually the boatswain mate, we were so close to the trawler that the boatswain mate, and together with his assistant Porky, our engineman, they hand loaded the mortar. They fired a number of shots and they missed the target. They loaded a white phosphorus round, 81 millimeter white phosphorus round. They hand loaded it and leveled it off. We were that close to the trawler that the normal fire for mortar is elevated. You drop and the mortar discharges. No, we were that close that he had to hand load it, level it off, and take aim and trigger fire it. And that white phosphorus round went into the trawler's starboard pilot house door. And had it not taken place when it did, I believe firmly that the trawler and its crew, the crew would have realized that they were not going to be successful in their attempt. And these individual vessels were rigged, if you will, kamikaze style. This particular trawler was rigged with 1,200 pounds of TNT situated all around the vessel, so that they had a button to push or a switch to flip in case they weren't going to make good their attempt, and they would just destroy themselves along with anybody close to them. As it turns out, when that 81 millimeter mortar white phosphorus round went into the pilot house, it just destroyed all controls, and that didn't happen. At that time, of course, the pilot house blew up in a white ball of flame, and then all ships started coming in on it. The Point Orient at different times, then the gunboat, the Gallop, and I don't know if the Wellpoint engaged it as well. Being a bigger ship, they had to stay further away. But the trawler ran aground at the mouth of the Skunk River, and we learned that it carried over 90 tons of ammunition and supplies destined for the enemy, the awaiting enemy.